Feel like I know you
Over a decade, I guess.
over a decade.
You worked on Sintel in the initial few
Yes.
months?
And I just had a great network at that time.
Yeah.
If someone has a job or a source of income, we can figure out rest of the stuff.
Talk to us a little bit about KGP 2.0.
Well, I think there are bears around the area for sure.
These days, there are tons of accelerators around it. So,
There is no doubt there is value, but there are people who are actually building.
But this was like, we had just put out an app.
So I am here today with Kshitij. Kshitij, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Atal. Hi, how are
So
you?
Kshitij has been building a lot of ventures over the last few years. I know him for over a decade. So Kshitij, like, what is your current company called?
It's known as Zero Route Planner. It's
Zero
a
Route
route
Planner.
optimization tool. Yeah.
And how much ARR do you have?
We have a few $1 million in revenue right now.
So you have built this company from where?
From staying in Bangalore, from India, and for the world.
For the world. And where are your customers located right
It's
now?
all across the world. Our app is being used in 140 countries. We have millions of drivers using us and thousands of courier companies.
Very cool. And what are the other things you have done? Like, have you raised money for this?
We have raised from Y Combinator, a few other angels who support Y Combinator companies, and just the seed. We have been profitable ever since.
Very cool. And what was your kind of like undergrad, or how did you graduate in?
I graduated from IIT Kharagpur, did electronics major, minor in computer science, did a dual degree in engineering entrepreneurship.
And you started your career as like what job?
So I did start my career as a data scientist at a pharma data analytical company named Vincia.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So if you look at his story of like Kshitij here, he kind of started in like software and data science and then moved into entrepreneurship. But since he did some undergrad and masters also, including entrepreneurship, he always was more of interested towards entrepreneur. Now he runs a company which has millions of dollars of revenue, built from India for the world, raised money from YC, and has been profitable. Listen to his full story on this podcast. He also asked me a lot of questions in that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to point out. In this podcast, we will also learn Atal's journey from KGP, being a VP of Gymkhana in KGP, all the way to SF, coming here, building a life for himself, and a lot of immigrants from India. So do give it a view, and then
Excited to share this story with you all, and thank you so much for being our watcher, and we always love your feedback. Thank you. If someone knows the other person for like 7+ years, they will know each other.
For lifetime.
It's for lifetime. Yes. Cheers to that. So the memory that I have is like in my first year, you being a CS from IIT KGP, you were like in your final year. I met you with a few other friends in your hostel in RP Hall.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the memory I have. What I saw there was like a very good engineer. But today, what I look up to you as like a very great entrepreneur. And, that's the story which I want to like capture today in here. Because, there are a lot of engineers who can do great stuff, but building a business and being an engineer are very different things.
Totally.
So let's first start with where are you from in India?
I'm from a city named Hoshangabad, very close to Bhopal in MP. I grew up there till my 10th standard, went to Kota for my IIT coaching, and then right after that joined IIT Kharagpur. That's where we met.
Very cool. So how was like your Kota coaching like? Do you feel like it's a industrialized scale of like producing engineers in India now?
Yeah, so I feel Kota was the happiest memory of mine. Like all throughout, like engineering, after engineering, building companies, like staying in Kota always felt like a very focused kind of journey, where after entering into IIT, it was like people were doing all kinds of shit. Like they were trying to build companies, they were coding, people were joining societies, and I kind of lost track of what I wanted to do there. Versus while being in Kota, it was like you had this single focus goal of just getting into IIT. And the overall atmosphere in Kota was also very, very conducive for the students that are there. So it was like very, very good journey for me.
It's kind of funny, when I meet people from different walks of life, some say like, oh my God, Kota was like simply a factory, and
it has kind of become a factory. Even back then, I was there from 2007 to 9. It was similar, but what I felt is like it has given like a structure to JEE preparation, and then now more so like people start studying or preparing for JEE right from their 7th, 8th grade. I have a few cousins who went to Kota in 9th standard.
Wow.
So it has kind of become that. But like if you can manage the pressure of it, I think it's a great form of training.
So when I look at like education in India, one part of education is about teaching people how to think for themselves.
Right.
Like as an entrepreneur, that's a lot about you have to think for yourself. You should always be innovating on your own, which is in there. Like, how do you think like this JEE coaching and everything is kind of like, it does it like help people think for themselves, or like how does it overall actually impact? And I mean, I just want your honest opinion about it.
I feel that the only thing that it tells about a person is that he can work very hard for like large amounts of time.
Just like a resilience test.
Resilience test. More than that, I don't feel there's a lot of difference between people who tried, attempted, and didn't actually clear JEE. It's just that you know that okay, if given a good task or an amount of time in hand, this person can definitely.
So you look at like JEE as like a very much of a resilience and consistency game rather than like So it can, because I mean resilience is important in pretty much everything you do, even as an entrepreneur. Sticking around for what you want to build. Okay, very cool. So you're saying that is a good test.
How about you? Like, where did you prepare for your JEE?
My JEE, I mean, I was in Delhi. In the first attempt, I didn't make it through.
Okay.
And then I dropped, and then I did like this FitG coaching. And I don't think, I mean, I was never a studious kid.
Right.
So for me, getting into IIT was like a big deal because it was important to my family and all. And I made it through.
Yeah.
But then I got mining engineering.
And I think you found your true calling when in IIT, right?
Yeah,
and
I think I found my true calling.
Stick to you all these years, like being in IIT, and then I think you led the curriculum there as well. I think you became VP there, and talk to us about that journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, politics is something I just never thought is for me.
Yeah.
But the good thing what I like about IIT is like it gives you an opportunity, a platform where you can just like try anything you want.
Right.
And for me, I was like, yes, this is something worth trying, like trying out politics or like just trying out something, whatever you want to do. Like being in Kharagpur was very advantage for me because I was far away from my family from Delhi. And I was like, okay, I can try out things and no one's going to say anything. And I just kept exploring that. And somehow
which year in KGP did you get into politics?
So maybe like actually first year. I mean, you remember we met in first year because of Ritesh Singh, who was like an activist for Anna Hazare. And I came to him because I read about him when I was in Delhi preparing for IIT. And I was like, I got to meet this guy at IIT KGP who's like sitting without eating food for like, I think 10, 13 days. And he was like very famous in media. And I was like, I am going to meet this guy. And when I came to meet him, that's when I met you with you and Nawal and everyone. And I think that's where, that's where we had the first encounter. Yeah.
Totally. And like, talk to us about your journey then. Like you became vice president in your third, fourth year, I guess. You had a dual degree course there?
Yeah. It was my dual degree course.
And so what was the journey after that? Like how did
you... Cool. Looks like, I think Kshitij is kind of like flipping a lot of the questions on me. But yeah, I think my journey is like, I just feel very privileged. I mean, I was vice president Gymkhana, and luckily I met Vinod Gupta, who came on a visit to RK Hall, and I just had a handshake. And they say like some relationships are just born in heaven.
Right.
This happens to be one of those relationships because I just never thought anything out of it. That this handshake would change my life forever.
Exactly.
And he just like invited me to US for internship, and then he helped me do my masters. He paid for the expenses for my masters partially, and I think that just changed my life forever. So. A part of why I do these things for IIT KGP is because I just feel like, I think when I was talking to Arjun, he was saying like, I donate these institutes to IIT KGP and I don't put my name on it because I just want to like be clear of the things that IIT has given me and I want to be thankful for that. In a way, like this KGP 2.2 is that for me because I feel like KGP has given me a lot in life.
Right.
And there is no way I can like, pay off what KGP has given me. But at least like helping the community of KGP succeed. And I mean, I feel like I'm able to pay back in some form a little bit, which I don't think there is any way to do that.
Totally.
Yeah. KGP has just like been such a thing in my life that it without KGP, I don't see myself where I would exist today.
And how did your life change once you were here in the US? Like you did a master's for a year or so, right?
Yeah, so I came here, did my master's at UC Santa Barbara. It was like a master's in management. Then I tried my startup. I was like very passionate about doing something.
So right out of your master's, you started doing startup?
Yes.
What visa were you in?
That time I was like on F1 and there was like this F1 OPT. I mean, I didn't know much about visa until I actually came here. And for me, I wanted to work at McDonald's because I wanted to experience a life which is very different than what I did like in engineering or something.
Most of our friends were either getting placed in India or getting job here, like in Google, Facebook. But like you chose a different path. Like you actually did a startup while on F1 here, and is that okay with? Oh, nice.
And then I think a lot of people don't know that you can do startup on OPT. It's just that building a startup is very hard, and you might be in a situation where you don't have any money to pay yourself, and then you are like, okay, well, how can I manage my visa?
How did you find this? Like
we actually got investors who invested in our company.
right out of your masters.
Yeah.
A lot of young KGPians would love to know, like, how do you navigate that journey? Like, do you fund it yourself in the initial few years, or do you find some investors to back you up?
We got lucky. So when I was at UC Santa Barbara, they had a competition called as New Venture Competition.
Yeah.
And for me, a part of me coming to the US was very much about being an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I was like, and then I'm going to stay back in India in Bangalore and I'm going to build my own company there, because I did not sit for placements at IIT.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, I didn't sit for placements. I was like very clear that I am not taking a job.
Okay.
I am building my own thing. Luckily, when Vinod Gupta said that he will pay for my masters, I was like, maybe I should just actually study.
Awesome.
So I actually came here. But still, like that, wo jo keeda hota hai na, entrepreneur wala, that was always there.
Achha.
So
and what was this first startup about? What were you doing back then?
So it
was in 2014, right?
No, it was in 2017. So yeah,
Wow.
16 is when 17 is when I graduated,
Wow.
and then I came here.
I didn't recollect that you were like 3-4 years younger than I.
Yeah,
I just thought you as a friend.
I was in my first year, and you were in your fourth or fifth year, and we were like, I was like, wow, these guys are so smart at IIT KGP, and I was like, I always liked hanging out with seniors because I'm like, these guys know a lot more than I know. So I better they are like my source of knowledge.
Nice.
So
yeah. you started the startup in 2017. What was the product like? Was it B2C, B2B?
So it was like a hardware startup. It's kind of funny. Hardware is like really hard.
Exactly.
And I was like, hey, I just want to participate in this competition. And we did that. And my team and we won like first prize in UC Santa Barbara. So we got like $15,000 as the award money.
Nice.
And with that $15,000,
and was this non-dilutive capital?
Yeah. So it's just like university.
Amazing, man. And is this still running, or people can apply to it?
Yeah, every year they run a competition.
Awesome.
So some of the companies that came out of it have gone public.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a couple of companies over. This is like a 20-year-old competition. Every year they do it.
And like how many folks or teams do they select?
They select so they run it like over a period of like 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And they say like, hey, build your business plan, build your idea, and then finally they select like 10-12 teams to present on a stage, and then they select like top 3 winners out of it.
Wow. You were one of the top 3 winners.
Yeah,
nice.
It was like, for me, I mean, actually, by the way, that broke a lot of imposter in me.
Yeah.
Because I was like thinking about, when you look at America, you're like, oh, there must be like some God thing happening here.
Yeah.
But then here I'm like coming from India and then winning a competition. I'm like, well,
to like $15,000 right out of college.
And I'm like, well, that wasn't that hard,
Yeah.
So it changed a lot of my perception that yes, I know something that is valuable. Like, it just like breaks out of.
And did you have a team back then, or you were doing this all alone?
Yeah, we had a team at UC Santa Barbara. We built a team, undergrad, masters, everyone like combined together.
Nice.
So yeah, then when we won this award, I was like, this is probably my $1 billion company.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's move full time on this. Yeah. And then people like the investors, and we got some media, and people were like, oh guys, these guys are doing something great. They're trying out something new. And people like to fund these students in the region, like who are trying something new. So that's how we raised like 100K from a couple of angel investors. It's just like, as I was in that journey 6 months in, we realized that we were just selling a marketing idea, the hardware concepts and all. Prototype was great. Yeah. But beyond prototype, it doesn't work.
Can you tell the listeners what this product was? Like, what were you thinking to build at that time?
So cleaning of solar panels is a big problem.
Okay.
And if you don't clean panels, if there is dust on the solar panel, it loses energy.
Okay.
So we were making a device that will clean the solar panel.
Nice.
By itself.
And is it like a drone or something? How does it?
So there are like drones in the market. Our device was kind of wind powered.
Okay.
So it's like uses the wind energy in the local region and keeps the panels clean.
Amazing. Nice. And were you able to get to like a product that was actually functioning, deployed?
Yeah, it was like functioning in our videos, and it was functioning when we installed in one place.
Yeah.
Once we started testing it out at different locations, we were like, overall it will increase the power, but it might damage the panel.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's when we were like, okay, people would not want their panels to be damaged.
Makes sense.
So then we were like, okay, so we returned the investment to the investor and then took up.
And that's a good thing to do. I think if you try a few times iterating on a product and it doesn't work out, it's always good to return the capital so that you have that at least that saying that you have done something good with the investors, and then next time when you raise, I think they'll be the first ones to back you up.
Yeah, I think people look at capital as a way which can get them, which is like in some people's mind, capital is like, oh my god, this is like such a big thing, and I should be using all the capital. But for me, like capital is just there's something more precious than capital, which is your own time.
Yeah.
And I would rather not spend my time on something which I already know, like, okay, this does not make sense. Like for me at that time, it was like, okay, if I have to work now, I will work on something else because this thesis has proven that it doesn't make sense.
Totally.
So for me, just like, okay, I have money, I have investor money, and just like spend 6 more months trying to like, okay, let's just keep tinkering on this. I'm like, no, I would rather save my time and do something better with my life.
Awesome. And then what did you do? What was your next
Then I found
step?
a job and I joined as an associate product manager. KGP has a big part in that. My first manager was a KGP alum.
Awesome. And how did you find that job in US?
So
it requires sponsorship to get a job here, right?
Yeah.
Like
so finding a job in the US is pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie. Okay. Especially as someone who has never tried finding a job in India either. You're just like fresh here.
How much time did it take for you to get a job?
Definitely 2-3 months.
Okay.
Here's one thing I think I'm very good at.
Yeah.
I have been doing networking since my second year in KGP. What I would do is like I would connect with every KGP alum from my second year itself. So like my LinkedIn connections with KGP alumnus were very high from my second year.
I think most KGP alumni know you at least by now. I think you're already.
I mean, I think I did not do it with like, hey, I want to get something out of you. I just wanted to connect with people.
Correct.
And I would like connect with like anyone who I feel like, oh wow, this guy is smart. I would want to connect. And I just had a great network at that time. And this is like my advice to anyone who is like trying to build a network. If you want to build a network, start with your alumni connections. These are the people who would resonate with your story and would actually accept your connection request a lot better than anyone out there in the world. So that's what I did. In my second year, I was doing this. Third year, fourth year, fifth year, great network. Never thought of like getting anything out of this network other than just like building these connections. And then when I was like here in the US and I was like searching for my job, actually before my job, I also found another KGP alum, Deepak. Anshula, he's like a founder of Slintel, a company. He sold a company. So I worked with him. Yes, he got a great exit. So I worked with him actually for a couple of months.
Okay.
So the deal was I was looking for a job after my startup. I was like, this startup didn't work out. I gotta get a job. I reached out to Deepak. I'm like, hey, Deepak, I was the VP Gymkhana and this and that. And Deepak looked at my profile. He's like, bro, see, I'm building a startup. I'm in the very early stage. So I can't pay you like salary, but I would love to take your help because I know you are good. You would be able to help me and let's work together. So I used to go to Hacker Dojo in Mountain View and we both used to work together on Slintel for like 2-3 months.
You worked on Slintel in the initial few months? Wow, amazing.
Yes. And then at that time, I mean, because this visa is like such a thing in your mind, you are like, okay, I want to find a sponsor or like company which will pay me all the expenses. And he paid me actually very well. Deepak paid me very well at that time. So I was very happy with that relationship. It's just that I got to go find a sponsor and this H1.
And you were on B1, B2 visa at that time?
No. At that time, I was F1 OPT.
And how long does it last before you can?
So that can go for like 12 months first and then you have 24 months. So I was like I was in my first 12 months with Deepak.
Okay, nice. And then what was the process of finding the next job?
So Deepak helped me with this. And in the meantime, on the side, I think I applied to a lot of companies and reached out to a lot of KGP alums. There's one guy, luckily, Shobik, his name is Shobik. And he just like saw that I'm KGPN and he was the hiring manager for a role associate PM. He was the director of products.
Wow.
So he said, hey, let's interview you. And then I got interviewed. And this was the only interview I got and the only interview I cracked and I got the job as an associate PM. So that was a great job. So that was
what company was it?
It's called as Castlight Health.
Okay.
It's like a public company in healthcare price transparency. There is a lot of things about that company. I think I had a good 2 years. Then I worked for eHealth. I mean, job in America is very different in a lot of ways. Like, layoffs are very common here. It's like a very
Do you get severances when
sometimes
you
do, sometimes don't. Yeah.
But is it legal for like is it mandatory for a company to pay severances when they're firing someone? Because companies here are a lot more conscious of firing people than back in India.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at the US culture, sometimes it's like very cutthroat. Like they are like, hey, it's about getting the job done, and if they're going through a layoff, they're like, hey, we don't have funds. But some companies, I mean, especially from the tech company, they have a lot more money and they do take care of the employees like 3 months or 4 months.
Makes sense.
So it totally depends.
And because you had a lot of experience with all this visa stuff after your graduation, while working on your startup and then again in a job, I think that has led you to building this startup that is now helping a lot more Indians.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think now for me, it was like just seeing that how difficult immigration system is. I was like, this problem has to be solved because I believe in equal opportunity. And I felt like my opportunity was taken away because of an immigration system. And I was like, I think Nawal kind of says it very well that anything that was kind of decided before you were born, it does not make sense. So I realized that immigration system has not changed since the time I was born. And I'm like, should I be trusting this system I was like, no, I cannot believe in the system. Like, especially the system discriminates me because I was born in India. It's like,
how long does it take now for Indians to get a green card, or maybe
so
like a
if you are
permanent
working for a
resident?
company like, let's say, tech company, you are not an extraordinary individual. You are just like employed, like even working at Google. The line for Indian nationals right now is like 100 plus years.
Wow.
Now, if you go through an extraordinary path, currently it shows to be like a few years. But I mean, you'd never know. It is just a hard truth of this. But I mean, there are like ways which I have been building on where I can still support the community. At the same time, down the road, I'm going to continue doing advocacy around immigrant rights, like to create reforms. Because I think it comes down to equal opportunity, and I think that is very important for us to think about.
So what visa would you suggest someone who's trying to do a startup in the US he should get?
If someone wants to do a startup in the US and has like a US customer, O1 is the best visa right now, I think.
And do you help people get that visa?
Yeah, we help people. We help people get O1 visas, EB1A green card. I mean, what we have built is like we can help people get any type of visa.
Okay.
And depending on what their circumstances, if someone has a job or a source of income, we can figure out rest of the stuff.
Nice.
Like, just make sure you are employable all the time. That's the same thing if whether you are in India or here. You stay on the top of the trend. You stay in, like, if AI is coming, AI. If it's blockchain coming, you gotta be on the top of blockchain or whatever new technologies. And you should have like your own direction about what you want to do.
Employable, have some skills there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
then rest you can take care of.
Yeah. We can take care of
And you also have a B2B product around this to like help lawyers.
So to me, immigration is very much about improving the state of immigration, which is like improving the quality of the whole field of immigration. So when I realized who are all the stakeholders, I was like, employer is a stakeholder. So how can we help employers? So we help employers hire immigrants. Then I was like, the other stakeholder is immigrant directly. So we have a product to help immigrants directly. And the third stakeholder is an immigration attorney. And we have a product to help them too. That, hey, use the latest technology and actually help more immigrants. So for me, it's like, yes, it is a business, but I think I also like philanthropy in overall the way I look at life.
Correct.
So I'm like, anyone I can help through these products, I'm happy to help. It's not about me making money. It's about helping everyone in this system, because immigrants do create win-win scenarios for everyone.
And one thing, so I this trip I met you very recently. And one thing that I have seen you do very well is this networking, but you have been organizing these large events. So how did you get into organizing the events, especially for the tech community founders, and like what drove you there?
I mean, I've been a very social person. Now, what I did initially, like how did I get to this places? First of all, when I was building my own startup, I was like trying to raise money initially. Later realized that maybe raising money is not the best thing for my startup. I was initially like just going to a lot of events, and I would meet a lot of amazing people, and I would pitch my startup like, hey, this is what I'm building, and I will get customers from it. And slowly, I built out a great network of people who are like, hey, I would want to be with you. And we were like building a community of like 10, 20 people who are going to events together. So we kept doing it for like, I would say 6 months. And you know, there is a thing, when you meet someone at an event first time, even if you might not like them, and you are like, oh, I don't want to look in this person's eyes, and you're just like, going your own way. And then the second time you see them, then you're like, well, this person shows up again. And the third time when this person shows up, then you're like, okay, well, maybe I should talk to this person. And I think this happened with me, and I think I've seen this with other people too. That sometimes when you keep showing up consistently, you start building those friendships. And I was building those friendships over a period of time with different people who are showing up. And then all of us were like, hey, 6 months in, we were like, okay, we're going to start hosting some of the events ourselves. Initially, I just started hosting Thanksgiving parties for founders. And I just love bringing immigrant community together. So I would like host in my apartment complex, and like, hey, everyone, we have free food. And if you want to bring something, bring it on and enjoy. And I think those events started becoming very successful. And then I was like, well, maybe we should start hosting more. And then I found different partners who are like, hey, we want to help support this. And over a period of time, it's just like been great. Now 500 plus people sign up to our events.
Almost every event.
Host, right? And it's like, it's because now I have also learned a lot about marketing than I knew. But I think I think there is a very small niche of these immigrant founders who come from all the countries in the world, who are, first of all, leaving their home country. So they don't have their friends the way they had back in India or like back in their home country. So they are looking for these friendships, like meaningful connections. They want to connect with their tribe. So when we bring people like, hey, all Italian immigrants, and you see like all of them connecting because they can speak the same language, it's like feels like tribe. Or like Indian community, like, hey, we are all from Bangalore coming together. I think that creates a lot of like belonging in San Francisco. And that's what I enjoy creating with these events.
And one thing that I would like to point out is like as a person who's coming from India, from Bangalore maybe, one would think that hosting these events, these large parties is very difficult because you have to organize the place, you have to put in some food, maybe bring in some speakers. But then over the time that you have been doing this, I think you have figured out a way where since you are helping a lot of people, you also get a lot of help in terms of what places you can host these events, maybe who can help you with catering, or maybe the speakers. I think a lot of times good speakers, they charge to come and speak at your events, versus you are able to invite them very, very naturally, right?
Yeah, I think we believe we are giving value for everyone.
Right.
I think I started, what is this guy? George Clooney,
Yeah.
He says, always think from a perspective of like, you are the solution to their problems.
Correct.
Oh my God, this statement really changed my perception about pretty much everything. Like when I was looking for a job at some point in my life, I knew this statement that I am the solution to the problems of the employer.
Right.
Which means I am solving their problem. They are not solving my problem. So I'm not going to be the one who's like, oh, I don't want to do this and that. I'm always like, okay, I am solving all their problems they have. So once I started learning this, my perspective changed, and I'm like, okay, so let's think about what a speaker is looking for or a VC is looking for. VC needs the best founders.
Yeah.
Right? Because their business is about investing.
Bilkul.
So I was like, okay, then what is a founder looking for? Founder is looking for funding or hiring. So I'm like, you got to find the best sources where they can raise.
Yeah.
So there is like an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I am the solution to the problem of a founder because I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring in the VCs who invest in you, and they will share great deep insights in our events. And people are like, hey, I want to come to your events. And then the other thing, I'm like, hey, I will find best talent that you can hire.
Yeah.
And I would also give you exposure so you can pitch.
Makes sense.
So founders are like, hey, I want to be there. Then I'm like going to the VC. I'm like, hey, I got these great founders, all YC backed, raised $5 million.
Yeah.
They are the people you want to invest in if you want to get like your 100x return.
It's like win-win for the entire community.
Everyone wins in this system. And I'm like, I love bringing this community. So I think somehow I just realized like, okay, everyone is winning in this system. Like even to the venue partners, I'm like selling them a story like, hey, guys, you want to support this community because these people are building the future. And they are like, yes.
Awesome.
So that's how we find all the different
along the
stakeholders.
way you have found a way to even monetize these kind of events. And I think your newsletters are also an extension of this kind of community event where you are kind of highlighting, to begin with, KGP founders, KGP alumni in whatever fields they are working. Talk to us a little bit about KGP 2.2.
Well, KGP 2.2 started as like some villa we were trying to build in Bangalore, which I realized.
I have been a part of that group, like all the discussions that's happening there.
Yeah, so I mean, I really like the idea that we should have like our own place where people can hang out, because there is some intellectual communication or connection that happens in KGPians.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so unique. Like you can connect with a KGPian and you can spend hours and you're like, well, this person understands me. The relatability is awesome. It does not matter which year you went to KGP. It's like 20 years different. Still connection is there. Like when I went to KGP recently, I met some of the students there, like third year and fourth year. And oh my God, I was like so impressed after meeting them. I'm like, I just see myself in them and I just feel like we are the same. Like I don't feel like I have aged at all. We are like in the same. In terms of intellectual knowledge, these guys are so smart.
I feel like people are knowing a lot more while they are in college. Even to start up, people have a lot more exposure in terms of what they want to start in B2B, B2C, or like what kind of companies they want to build versus back in our time.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is a real change in building startups, and there is a real mindset shift that has happened in KGP. At our time, I think people really wanted to get into jobs a lot more. Now, I think people really want to build a lot more, which is great. So, I mean, I think KGP 2.2 is an extension of that villa, and we were like, okay, well, we should be doing something about the KGP community. And I was like, what is a small part that I can own end to end that I'm not going to mess up? So it happened to be a newsletter, which I'm like, okay, let's first build a distribution network. Now we have 10,000 plus subscribers. So I'm like, slowly, how can I generate more value? And once I started talking to like Arjun, and one day I just met Arjun at a picnic, and he said that, hey, I like reading what you write on the KGP 2.2.
Arjun has been very supportive of KGP founders.
Yeah, he's like such a great person. He like just connects everyone he meets from KGP, and he's like, hey, I want to help your startup. So when Arjun said this, that, hey, I read your newsletter and I share that list with other people, that, hey, use this email distribution. I'm like, wow, we must have created something valuable here. So then I'm like, okay, now let's do more podcasting. And that's why I'm like, okay, let's record stories of KGPians like you who have creating like very unique stories. Like, just like from KGP, you're like a CS guy, and CS guys are considered very muggu, but here you are like running business, which is going very
By the way,
well.
one correction there. So I am from EC. I did a minor in CS.
Okay.
But like it's the same tribe.
Yeah, it's the same tribe.
Yeah.
But yeah, from there, you becoming a businessman is a very different deal. So I'm like very much interested. So finish off KGP 2.2. Yeah, great. It's helping a lot of people. We continue to help KGP founders. With this newsletter, my aim is how can I deliver value to people who are connected on the distribution list.
Makes sense.
So if I have like immigrant founders distribution, I will talk about them. And I will share their story with other immigrants. So maybe like, I'm just a messenger in this system. And I mean, my business does work on immigration, but I think that is like a byproduct, and I get a lot of people interested because of just like creating value for them.
And you have a few other newsletters as well. Like what are they focusing on?
Well, one is like KGP 2.0. The other is like this IIT Mafia.
So you're thinking of going big on IIT as well. The brand IIT.
Yeah, I think when I look at our university rankings, KGP or IITs, I feel like we are very much underrepresented in the world. Especially the amount of value we are creating. Like, I mean, if you see all the top CEOs from IITs, and IITians are not kind of like in the top rankings in the world. I'm like,
is it?
Like, yeah, in the world rankings, you won't see like IITs in like among the top 50, while IITs have created such great CEOs everywhere. So I'm like,
one stat I was looking at is in terms of YC admissions, Y Combinator. So the third largest place or university from where they get their founders is from IITs.
Wow, that's crazy. And still, like, IITs are not among the top universities in the university ranking. And I mean, I understand all the different, like, hey, they're gonna like look at the professors and all this and that. But our contribution needs to be acknowledged. And I think with IIT Mafia, I'm gonna start doing more of that about like, hey, bring top IIT stories out in the world. So that's like my other one. And that is like, the third one is like more about helping Indian immigrants and then immigrants around the world, bringing their stories out.
What is it named?
I do it like more of an opensphere.substack.com.
Got it.
And run it through my company's newsletter. But yeah, that the mission of that is like share stories of immigrant founders.
Awesome. So I was just asking, so when you quit your latest job, so how did you figure that like you are in this journey where you are trying out new things, you have your own van life and stuff like that. So how did you plan this journey on a visa that you are in currently? So how are you planning the long term?
Yeah, I mean, I think long term, a lot of the world, well, I don't do a lot of long term planning. I wish I did. But I think long term, my thinking is the world is moving more and more towards being on the internet. The value creation is happening on the internet. So instead of worrying about like what is happening on the ground and this and that, I just focus on the top of the game, which is like internet. And it doesn't matter where I stay, where I live, as long as I'm able to connect with people through the internet, it's great. Now with van life, I just have one more level of freedom, which is like able to travel easily within different countries, different locations. Like today we are in SF, like tomorrow I would be in like South Bay, and I can stay there. I don't have to worry about like driving back, this and that, you know. And one day I can be in LA and just like spend time and for weeks.
That's an amazing flexibility, right?
Yeah, it's like a very interesting kind of freedom which I never had.
And how do you deal with like the safety aspect of it? In the initial days, did you feel like is there some safety concern there, or like you were always like this is how it goes?
Well, I mean, I think definitely I was scared in the initial days. I mean, I think first few days of sleeping was very hard. I was in van in like locations where I was like, well, if there
where do you park these vans? Is it like right in SF downtown or in the Bay Area?
I mean, I would stay out of SF as much as possible. I mean, there is like a lot of challenges here, and I stay away from all those challenges as much as possible. What I try to do is like the more I can be in a location where the streets are like not that busy, then I get to sleep better at night. In the initial first week, it was very hard to sleep because any honking or any big truck or anything going on the road would make me feel as if like someone is coming to tell me that you cannot park here.
Right. And how do you figure out which locations are okay to park your RV?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does take a while to figure out that part. I mean, it's, by the way, it's not an RV, so it's like a very much of a car kind of vehicle. So as you can park cars, you can park this vehicle. So it's like, it is like very standard, which is, I got lucky. If I would have taken an RV, I cannot travel like the way I travel right now.
And you didn't know this before buying this?
Someone told me that, hey, you can drive this on the same license, you can park at the same spots. And I'm like, wow, that is amazing. Right. But I think there is a lot of advantage of having this vehicle over an RV.
What is in there in your van? Can you
what all is there?
Yeah.
Well, I have a bike in my van, and I have a kitchen where
You
I
can
can
cook
cook.
there?
Yeah, I can cook in my van. I have a
Nice.
queen bed where I can sleep very well. Well, since I moved out of my apartment, there is a lot of stuff that I want to get rid of.
Yeah,
There are a
yeah.
lot of books in that which I don't think I'm going to read
How
anymore.
big is your van, man?
It is a decent size. It's like a kind of like a bus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I got to get rid of a lot of the stuff
Yeah.
to make it like more easy to sleep in it and be comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, van life has been an interesting chapter of my life. I think I'm going to write a lot more about this over a period of time. Yeah,
And
as we
I see you like exercising a lot, doing a lot of these road trips on bikes, and like how did you get into that?
Well, athletics came more as like just a part of my journey when I was like, so I have a lot of energy and I also have ADHD. And as an ADHD with a lot of energy, if I don't know how to direct that energy in the right way, I can actually mess up my life. It's very destructive because I have so much energy and I'm not able to focus anywhere and I'm just like everywhere. Yeah. So I keep channeling that energy into different ways. Now, what happened a few years ago is like, I was working for a job and I was like, okay, I have all this energy and I'm not able to figure out and not able to find purpose in my job anymore. And I'm like, I got to figure out something. So I got into half marathons and then half marathons too, started enjoying running, then full marathons. And
What's your timing like?
I mean, I think my best time might be like, I think 3:36 or something.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I have actually done a very few marathons. Like I'm not a long distance runner. I just enjoyed running. Now I don't run that much because I think it's very intense on your legs. I do more biking these days. But yeah, that's like my journey getting into running. And then at some point I was like, okay, let's get into biking too. Then I started doing more biking here and there. I would go like 100-mile bike ride by myself and I would have a great time. And I'm like, wow, I love biking too. So that's how I got into more and more athletics. Now biking, I feel it's a lot of therapy. You go on your own and you are in nature and you just like don't have to worry about anything. Yeah. And I think not having network there also helps. So I feel like biking is more of my therapy now.
Okay. In one of the videos I was seeing, you were talking about bears in the SF area. Are there real bears here or like?
Well, I think there are bears around the area for sure. Okay. There are like mountain lions too here in that around that area. They're very rare to find, but they are there. Like I have heard stories of that. Okay. Now, for me, it's like, I like playing on the edge, and it's just like there is a thrill that comes out of it that I enjoy. I don't know whether it's good in long term or not, but I kind of enjoy that thrill, that adrenaline. So I mean, I think I would like push myself in situations where there is that thrill coming. So yeah, I think that bear stories are like just like me trying to be a little more risky in my lifestyle. But then it's kind of interesting when I'm like actually on these trails when there are bears and all. My mind is like always about thinking about how I'm gonna fight the bear. It's very interesting, and that's just like me being lost in a very different phase than thinking about what I'm going to run with my business or what I'm going to make money. Like on a very different phase. Like,
and what are your solutions to it? Like
sometimes I'm like, hey, I have like this lighter in my pocket and I'm going to like literally like maybe burn my bag that I'm holding. Okay. Sometimes it's like, hey, I have this CD, and I'm going to like make this noise and whistle and make this noise and everyone is going to be like, hey, bear's going to run away from me. Sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm going to clap. So it's like all these ideas are on my mind.
Have you researched? Does any of them actually work?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos. I'm like, which one works? Yeah, these one. Very cool. Coming back, so this is like about my story, but here today we are here to talk about your story. So tell me, like, how did this kid getting out of IIT got into startups?
Yeah, so I actually have a dual degree in engineering and entrepreneurship. So my fifth year in KGP was around entrepreneurship. So I had a little bit of exposure to entrepreneurship back in Kharagpur itself. But then as I came out of IIT KGP, I worked as a data scientist for an year. But then the next year I went into OYO. And like there... Ritesh was leading OYO and it was growing like crazy. This was like the initial first, second year of OYO, 2015. It was raising like 100 million at that time. And then seeing that passion and energy to build a startup as big, have a global ambition, that's what kind of lit that hunger into me as well, to do something around startups. Didn't know anything about it, but like had seen a lot of my KGP peers getting into it. I think Dipit from our batch was doing in shorts back then. They had also raised some very small funding at that time, but then they have also built like a really successful business around that. So I felt like seeing a lot of KGPians around you and then the companies that you work, those are the initial triggers where people get into startups. And I think that's where Bangalore and SF as cities are very important, where you know that like you can at least do it. Like the major difference between IITians versus people who haven't gone to IIT, I don't feel there's too much of difference in the in your mental capacity or your work ethic or maybe your skills, but it's mostly knowing that people from your college or from your institutes have done very well, especially in startups. So
It's like an inspiration is out there for you.
yeah. And you know that okay, people have done it, you can maybe find someone who can help you out, and just knowing that is like half the job done. So I got into startups. I started building something around co-working office space aggregation. At that time, back in 2016-17, I think a lot of inspiration came from the US, and like people were trying to build similar companies. I think in the initial years, Oyo was also trying to do something of an Airbnb of sorts for India, but then they really found their own mode. Now we don't say that Oyo is Airbnb for India. It's like they have their own model, they have their own, they kind of operate as a hotel, right? They recently purchased Motel 6, and I see like I'm very inspired to like see him grow over the years. So Ritesh,
So but I mean, whenever someone moves in a big company or like a growth company, it's very hard to break out of that mindset because you are like, hey, doing something of your own is hard. What was that journey like? How did you decide to like, hey, I'm going to quit and I'm going to do my own?
It took me a lot of time. So I went into Oyo thinking that I'll just start up. It almost took me a year to actually put down my papers. I feel that it takes a lot of time for people to actually jump in. But once they jump in, it's even difficult to come back to a job, right? So I did this co-working office space aggregation for a year and a half. Had like a small exit there. It was we tried to build a WeWork for India, but then very quickly realized that it is a capital intensive game. So we had a few offices going for us, but then we pivoted to doing a co-working office space aggregation, and we kind of served our co-working offices as a lead generating platform, and ran it for a year and a half. Had a small exit.
So how was that exit like? A lot of people end up shutting down.
So like an investor had invested in the company, and then he kind of had a lot of his own co-working offices going on. So this kind of made sense as an investor for him to acquire the entire company. So he took over.
So he kind of invested in the company because he was building co-working himself.
Co-working himself, and then took over the entire company. And
so
then
he was like, okay, I'm gonna run this. And why did you decide to shut it?
It was growing decently, but it was not a huge market. So it's like 99 acres for co-working. So it's even smaller market. It was a profitable startup. Like most of the products that we have built have always been profitable.
I think I want to touch on this. A lot of people raise a lot of money and do not achieve profitability. What is your mental model like in this?
So like I kind of approach it as like as a traditional company where you are hiring at a pace where you're getting to profitability. So we don't hire very fast. Even when we had raised some funds for my second venture, we didn't hire very aggressively. It's like you're building something, you can do it with like a 4-5 member team. Only once you grow to a certain extent, you put in more people. So a lot of founders think that putting more money or maybe people to a problem will solve it. But I think you will have to find your mode, you will have to find your PMF before growing it very large. So that's
very cool. So you are always like, hey, first let's get the right small team together. Let's get to a good stage of profitability, irrespective of whether you raised or not. Then only you will go growth. But I mean, if you look at Ritesh's journey of Oyo, I don't think they looked at profitability.
He is like an amazing storyteller. But at the same time, their team is like an executionist. Like they execute very fast. So doing it in India, scaling globally. I think there are some businesses there that really require capital. And I think a building like a hotel for the world is something in that domain. Like there are products which need capital, there are products which don't, and I generally prefer to build SaaS startups which by their definition don't need a lot of capital.
Very cool. So now you got this great exit, and
No,
like it's not a great like small exit. You are out of it. Then what are you thinking
So
at that time?
I was dabbling around new ideas, tried building a few apps in that. So at that time I was, this is like a trait of new founders. Like most new founders right out of college, they'll see B2C products. So you'll always be like inclined towards building B2C products. I was trying to build a few apps on Play Store, App Store, it wasn't working very well. So like, and then the kind of exit I had gotten, like the money was dropping down. So I had actually thought of joining a company and got offers from Reliance, Jio, and then Swiggy and a few others. What I had also figured was, it's kind of controversial to say, like, but while doing working as a software engineer, it takes a lot of your time, right? Versus a product manager is relatively easier. You get to decide what features to build, set a long-term vision, pipeline, but then you have like a few hours for yourself. So that Geo was the time where I had a few hours to think what to build next.
So you joined Geo at
Yeah,
that time.
so I joined Geo as
And
a
as a product manager?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you worked on your first at Oyo, were you a software developer?
Yeah, I was a software.
So you started as software developer. You worked there for Oyo, and then you did your own startup. So you were like, okay, but this is very different from your software engineer. Did you build out that co-working aggregator startup?
The initial product is what we had built ourselves, and then I had hired just 1 or 2 developers. In fact, one of those developers still continuing with me in the latest startup.
Wow. So how was that journey, like transitioning from a software developer to a entrepreneur?
It takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of like also passion in terms of what you are building. It takes a lot of time to figure out what you want to do. So for many years we were building B2C products, but then I finally figured that B2B is our place to be. And I think a lot of second time, third time founders do that by default. So you kind of know that B2C, you need to spend a lot to get a few users, versus B2B is kind of a like brand building game where you do a lot of ASO, SEO, build brands on Capterra, G2. So that's where we are. Right.
Very cool. So now you joined this company, Reliance Jio. How long did you work there?
Again, I went there with the thought that I'll just quit in a few months. But it took me some time to figure out what we want to do next.
I mean, so now this might be a hard question. When you knew you are not gonna stick around, why did you join that job?
Just to find some time, some cash.
Okay, I see. So you were saying like struggling with cash at that time because
I actually hired a small team at that time. And then I was paying them from whatever I had made in the last exit, and then earlier I was paying them from my salary, but now I didn't have any.
So you were like, I gotta make money, and then you joined Reliance Jio. How did you stay? How long did you stay there?
I kind of stayed for a year.
For a year.
Yeah. And then we found an idea which was kind of growing in India. There was a legal compliance where government wanted every vehicle to be GPS enabled, and there was a huge demand. So we started installing GPSs in commercial vehicles, trucks, Ola, Ubers, and then started getting a lot of inbounds from all these truck terminals in Mumbai.
Wow.
And
so the government compliance was like a new thing that was happening, and you were like on the top of the compliance. You were like, hey, this is coming up, and you saw this opportunity, and you were like, let's get out of Reliance and build this.
Get into this. So build that for like a few months, got lots of customers, like tens of thousands of vehicles.
How many app downloads did you have?
I think like a few tens of thousands of downloads within like 3-4 months. We were installing GPSs, so a lot of demand were coming like inbound. We had these installers who were putting pamphlets in truck terminals in Mumbai, Vashi area. And then we didn't have to go out and market ourselves. It was like a business developing on its own. And with that idea, we had applied to YC in W20, got into YC in the W20 batch, and then kind of pivoted to the current product that we are building right now.
Very cool. But what I see in your journey, like, there are some things you have developed outside this too.
Yeah.
So what it shows to me, like, you just see some opportunities out there and you're like, hey, this is like worth pursuing, and you kind of like set up a team and you're like, hey, let's tinker around. How much is the ARR that you have? Like, is this like something like you share? Like, okay, how much is the ARR you're making through your products?
So we kind of operate as like a B2B SaaS product. The first product that we built was into a route optimization category. We have a route planner which is being used by millions of drivers across hundreds of companies. It's basically a tool for a driver to plan their deliveries. It's like a traveling salesman problem. The first year in college, you learn algorithms, and that's where we implemented in like a UI format. We got to over 1 million downloads with that product, million plus revenue with that. And then we also launched a couple of other products in SaaS domain itself.
So you have like right now revenue of like over $1 million,
a few $1 million,
$1 million coming through your products. So this is very interesting because a lot of people, especially software engineers, they want to be an entrepreneur. but they don't know that they can sell.
Yeah.
Here you are selling and you have built out the product. So what is the advice you have for all these software engineers who have great talent, they can build, but they don't know how to sell?
So B2B and B2C selling are like two different ball games. And then there's new category coming in around D2C in India. So there's a lot of knowledge or gyan from a lot of D2C founders who are doing very well in that industry. And I think D2C is really picking up in India. There's large way to go. I'll specifically talk about B2B part of it because I have that kind of focus. In B2B, it's like a very structured kind of a game where once you build a product, you try to build the MVP in a few weeks, launch it multiple times. And then there are specific platforms that you can use to get the initial users. So in B2B products, it's very useful to get the initial feedback from users, whether they like it or not, whether they are sticking to it. In B2B products, retention is like very important. So once you have the user, how long is it staying with you, sticking with you? So for example, in the route optimization play, the thing that worked really well for us was translating the app in 51 languages. So we had this app launched. We just were in the market for a few days, and the app was not finished. We just launched the beta in like a week of hacking. We started getting downloads from London, UK area, a few from US, and users were saying, I'm not able to really log in, do anything with the app. And that's where we thought, like, we don't have many users, let's just start fixing these problems. And once we spoke to a lot of these drivers, these were drivers who were driving for FedEx, UPS, and at that time COVID had hit, so driving for smaller businesses. These drivers were speaking Spanish, so we figured that let's translate the app in Spanish. And that moment kind of translated us into getting into the Latin American market. So we had a lot of downloads coming in from Mexico, Argentina, Chile, and that's where we figured that this translation is like a huge hack for us. We translated the app in 51 languages within 3 months. And during that time, like the number of downloads, the number of users started like getting doubled every few weeks. So like for the longest time, and the second hack is we kept the app for free. So there were a few other apps in the market at that time, but like we kept the app for free for like over 6 months. And that had given us a lot of initial users, a lot of initial feedback. And then once we put a paywall to the app, that's the second month, I think we got to profitability. So those are my feedback. I think you will have to find a channel that's working very well for you. For us, it was like a Play Store download, a lot of reviews on Play Store, and then a translation angle that worked for us. But of course, like in B2B, there are many other channels that you could be
Got
using.
it. So let's think about someone who is like from KGP right now.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get your perspective. Like this person wants to be an entrepreneur. Let's say a CS degree.
Yeah.
Or EC or CS minor. You know, EC major. What is your advice for them to do right now as they're graduating if they want to build?
If they want to build in B2B, it's kind of a safer play than B2C. You don't have to raise a lot. But then with AI, I think building that MVP, the cycle has again shrunk a lot. So you could build an MVP in a week or so. The second thing is like just go and talk to users. As YC always says, make something that people actually want, and then you have to keep speaking to a lot of users. So try and pitch to first people that you know in your network, maybe like KGP alumni who are starting up, maybe working in larger companies, and then get that user, like Airbnb founder says, like you want to get those 100 users that really love you, then like millions of users which just use you like once in a while. So once you have that niche, maybe once you're there, you can maybe pitch and raise some amount of capital. I think for a B2B SaaS startup, like half a million or maybe $1 million is good enough to go and build a small team around it. And these days there are tons of accelerators around it. So like accelerators like PeerX, YC, all of these would give you generous funds and then also help you raise subsequent rounds. So like with a little bit of cash, experimenting with a lot of users, and then there are channels like AppSumo. You can build a brand on Capterra, G2, or also launch on Product Hunt where you get a lot of initial users, and then they also help you with initial cash. So on AppSumo, you can run lifetime deals and get paid for it, and then that funds your few months of operations. So that's what
this is all like B2B. B2B.
This is
B2B hacking like
B2B
AppSumo, G2,
Capterra, Product Hunt. These are the platforms where you get initial user. You price it very low so that you at least have a few users who can give you feedback. Maybe keep it for free for a few months and then build from there.
Very cool. So Kshitij, like what are you building these days?
I'm dabbling around a few AI ideas. I'm trying to build agents for internal workflows, especially around customer support, customer success, built a few rags. These are very common ideas around AI. But like if you are trying to build in this space, I think it's important to launch faster, iterate with your ICP, and figure out what's one niche that you can go and like create a large company. This time around, our focus is to build a product that has that 10 100 million kind of a revenue potential, rather than finding smaller niche of like a few $1 million in revenue. So I think that's typical journey of like a founder. Once first you find something that's working, and then you try and find a larger market where you want to build like $1 billion company.
Very cool. So one question I have is like, how can people help you in your journey?
I think it's mostly giving me feedback on the product. Maybe senior KGP alums would definitely can help me finding this customer introduction, say in the Bay Area, back in India. But like even people who are earlier or younger in the journey can help us with the product feedback and helping us build this product early on.
Very cool. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
What I want to know is like, what is one moment where you were like, this is just not for me, like, entrepreneurship is not for me? Because software engineer is a very comfortable job in the world. You get paid very high. But then you left all that and you're like, I'm going to hustle through my life. And you're still hustling. You're like being in San Francisco, trying to like figure out what you want to do. It's like a very different kind of energy. I mean, that comfort is not there. So what is like one moment, one story that you remember that you are like, dude, I was just like at the bottom of me?
This was actually after the first small exit that I had gotten. Like for a few months, I was trying to build a few apps, and these were like apps on Play Store around call recording, around. So we also had this OBD plugin that we had built for vehicles on the road, so you could hook on our app and then find a lot of parameters about your car's operations, like tire pressure, engine temperature. So we built like a few apps in very short period of time and launched all of them on Play Store, App Store, but it wasn't working for me. So that was the time that I figured that maybe experience from a larger company will definitely help me out. And I didn't have enough funds to actually like hire a marketing team or a sales team to actually see it grow.
So you mean like you had the app, but no one was downloading it?
No, we didn't get anything. And that's what I think luck also plays a major role in whatever you do in life. So at Zio as well, we just launched the app. And since it was in the middle of pandemic, a lot of drivers were actually looking for tools which can help them deliver, because a lot of smaller shops had gone online. They were building these links, Shopify or links to send their customer and then get orders from there. So a lot of drivers were driving for themselves. These are small time part-time drivers, and they didn't know, and they didn't have any experience delivering for themselves.
So they were searching for ways to optimize their route, and somehow it started picking up on its own.
And I would say that I would think that there's some kind of strategy around it. But this was like we had just put out an app. We didn't do any kind of marketing. We started getting a few downloads.
So organically, your app picked up on Play Store and
after it picked up, we started doing a lot of ASO, SEO, putting out good images. But like there has to be some luck involved when you are launching new apps. Of course, there are things that you can do with the experience that I have. Maybe I can do it better. But serendipity, luck, and then hard work, this goes hand in hand.
Very cool. Just like the way you shared, like, as a software engineer, I think this might be a common issue that you can build great stuff, but you are like, I'm not getting any downloads.
Exactly.
This is like a very common problem. And you are like, hey, I just figured out like, okay, organically it started picking up somehow. But yeah, it's like a very common problem.
Yeah. One thing that we did actually at that time was get into these lot of Facebook groups where a lot of UPS, USPS, FedEx drivers were hanging around. And a lot of the posts that I was seeing was them complaining about their own route optimization tool. So FedEx, UPS gives them their own route optimization tool, and they were somehow not happy with it. So what we really cracked on that route optimization piece was the UI part of it more than the algorithm. So we actually worked on making it very, very easy for the end driver to use it. What we would do is paste our link on those posts where people were complaining, and then also follow up with them on maybe messages on Facebook, Instagram. And then that I think had some little bit to do with the initial downloads that we had got. But other than that, it's kind of a lucky coincidence that it was needed. We had a lot of tailwinds during COVID. So I think a lot of other route planners had reported like significantly high growth during that time. And it was very lucky for us to get started exactly in the COVID time.
Wow. I mean, you were prepared because you were in there at that time.
Yeah. I think like it helps to continuously keep building. You'll fail a lot of times, but if you get succeeded a few, that is all that matters.
Very cool. Thank you, Kshitij. I think your story is like more of what I look as like made in India kind of story, where you basically built out all these products from India and now they are getting used in Latin America and all around the world and being very successful. So I feel like this is a lot of inspiration for a lot of engineers in India that, hey, like you don't have to be sticking to like, let's say big tech jobs. You can like build whatever you want to build and there is a way out. And you know, a lot of people when I meet, they are like, hey, I want to come to America and build this. There is no doubt there is value, but there are people who are actually building from India.
Tons of SaaS founders, and I would like to bring up this community in India, SaaS Bhumi. I think there are like thousands of SaaS founders who meet in Bangalore, in Chennai, are building from India, selling all across the geography. So like, and with millions and maybe tens of millions of dollars in revenue. So it's not really true that you have to be in SF for you to build and sell solutions, or at least SaaS solutions globally. But then if you are selling to enterprises, it definitely makes sense to have a presence. If you have like a sales lead here, or maybe someone who can speak to these people and sell for larger ticket size, that definitely makes sense.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Kshitij, for sharing your story.
And it was lovely listening about your story as
well. Yeah, thank you for bringing that out.
This was one of the episodes where people get to learn the real Atal and his journey.
No, we got to share, both of us got to share, and thank you for being here, and I appreciate it, and thank you to all the listeners for listening to our story. Looking forward to your feedback and more stories about how people are building from all around the world and bringing their dreams to light. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.